They say that blood is thicker than water, but in my experience, blood is just the excuse people use to bleed you dry. When you are 24 years old, drowning in the suffocating weight of student loan debt, and running on a dangerously precarious cocktail of black coffee, sheer desperation, and perhaps 3 hours of interrupted sleep a night, you start to see the world in very stark, unforgiving terms. There is no room for pleasantries. There is no energy left for the polite fictions that hold normal families together. There is only the grind, the relentless, bone-crushing machinery of survival. I was a senior in college, studying mechanical engineering, a degree that demanded every ounce of my intellectual capacity. But the university didn't care that my parents had long ago declared bankruptcy, nor did they care that my financial aid covered roughly enough to pay for my textbooks and perhaps a single semester's worth of instant ramen. To bridge the cavernous gap between my reality and my tuition bills, I worked two jobs. My alarm went off every single morning at 3:45 a.m. It was a brutal, jarring sound that felt less like a wake-up call and more like a physical assault. I would drag my exhausted body out of a mattress that had long lost its structural integrity, shuffle through the oppressive silence of the house I shared with my mother and older brother, and head to my first job, opening a high-end, high-volume coffee shop in the affluent part of town. For 6 hours, I was a machine pulling espresso shots, steaming milk to exact microfoam specifications, and pasting on a plastic, subservient smile for people whose morning lattes cost more than my hourly wage. I would stand there, my apron stained with dark roast and my hands smelling permanently of vanilla syrup, watching people who had never known a day of financial panic in their lives complain that their foam was slightly too stiff. At 10:30 a.m., I would strip off the apron, sprint to the bus stop, and head to campus. I would sit through lectures on thermodynamics and fluid mechanics, my eyes burning, my brain struggling to process complex differential equations while my stomach growled in loud, embarrassing protest. But the day was only half over. At 5 p.m., after cramming in whatever studying I could manage in the cramped, poorly lit corners of the university library, I would take another bus to the industrial park on the outskirts of the city. My second job was at a massive logistics and distribution warehouse. Here, the environment shifted from the clinking of ceramic mugs to the deafening roar of conveyor belts and the harsh, synthetic glare of sodium vapor lights. For 7 hours, I unloaded trailers, stacking heavy cardboard boxes onto wooden pallets, wrapping them in endless miles of industrial plastic wrap, and hauling them across concrete floors that seemed designed to destroy the human spine. The warehouse was a purgatory of dust, sweat, and repetitive motion. By the time I finally clocked out at midnight, my muscles screamed in agony, my joints ached with a dull, persistent throb, and my mind was a numb, static-filled void. I would get home around 1 a.m., collapse into my bed, and wait for the 3:45 a.m. alarm to start the nightmare all over again. This was my life. It was a fragile, exhausting house of cards, and I was doing everything in my power to keep it from collapsing. And then there was Trent. Trent was my older brother. He was 28 years old, possessed a smile that could charm the venom out of a rattlesnake, and was, without a shadow of a doubt, the most arrogant, entitled, and utterly useless human being I had ever had the misfortune of knowing. Trent was the golden child. While I was the quiet, invisible workhorse, Trent was the loud, flashy show pony. He had never held a job for more than 3 consecutive months in his entire adult life. He fancied himself an entrepreneur, a word he used to mask the reality that he was a professional parasite. His so-called business ventures were nothing more than a series of absurd, half-baked schemes that inevitably ended in spectacular failure, usually leaving our enabling mother to foot the bill. He traded cryptocurrency with money he borrowed from her retirement fund. He bought expensive DJ equipment to start a music career that resulted in exactly 0 gigs. He purchased bulk dietary supplements from questionable overseas vendors, convinced he was going to build an empire, only to leave boxes of expiring pills rotting in our garage. But Trent's financial incompetence was only a symptom of his deeper psychological rot. He was a narcissist of the highest order, a man who genuinely believed that the universe owed him luxury, success, and adoration simply for existing. And because the universe rarely accommodates such delusions, Trent took what he felt he was owed from those closest to him, specifically from me. Growing up, Trent's thievery was small, petty, and constant. He would steal the cash out of my birthday cards before I even had a chance to open them. He would take the video games I had saved up for months to buy and trade them in for store credit to buy things for himself. As we got older, his audacity only escalated. If I left a $20 bill on my dresser, it would vanish. If I bought expensive groceries for my specific meal prep, he would eat them and leave the empty containers in the fridge. I had tried to confront him, of course. I had yelled, I had pleaded, I had threatened. But confronting Trent was like trying to punch a cloud of smoke. He would gaslight me with the practiced ease of a sociopath. He would laugh in my face, call me paranoid, tell me I was crazy, or worst of all, he would weaponize our mother. My mother, bless her heart, was completely blinded by her love for her firstborn son. If I accused Trent of stealing, she would burst into tears, begging us not to fight, pleading with me to be more understanding of Trent's stressful transitional period. To keep the peace, I learned to suffer in silence. I bought a lockbox for my cash. I kept my door locked when I wasn't home. I lived like a prisoner in my own house, constantly vigilant, constantly anticipating his next betrayal. It was a Tuesday evening in late November when the universe decided to snap the fragile thread of my sanity. It was raining, a cold, miserable driving rain that soaked through my cheap jacket and chilled me to the bone. I had just finished an absolute nightmare of a shift at the warehouse. The conveyor system had broken down, forcing us to move everything manually, and my lower back felt like it had been repeatedly struck by a blunt instrument. I was walking from the bus stop to my house, my boots splashing through deep puddles, my mind completely blank with exhaustion. I realized, with a sinking feeling of despair, that I had exactly $12 in my checking account, and I hadn't eaten anything since a stale muffin at 9 o'clock a.m. I ducked into a small, dimly lit gas station on the corner, seeking temporary refuge from the rain. The air inside smelled of stale tobacco, artificial cherry slushies, and the harsh chemical scent of floor cleaner. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, casting a sickly pallor over the aisles of overpriced junk food. I grabbed a generic brand energy drink and a shrink-wrapped sandwich that looked like it had been manufactured in a laboratory rather than a kitchen. As I walked up to the counter, I dug into my damp pockets and pulled out a crumpled $10 bill. It was my emergency cash, the money I kept hidden in my shoe, just in case the banking app decided to freeze my account again. The cashier, an older man with a weary expression that mirrored my own, scanned my items. "That'll be $6.42, he muttered, not looking up from his phone. I handed him the $10 bill. As he opened the register to get my change, my eyes drifted to the glowing, brightly colored display of lottery scratch-off tickets under the thick plexiglass counter. I never bought lottery tickets. I was an engineering student. I understood probability, statistics, and expected value. I knew that the lottery was a tax on the mathematically illiterate, a desperate tax levied against the poor and the hopeless. It was a fool's game. But as I stood there, dripping wet, shivering, my muscles screaming in agony, staring down the barrel of another 60 hours of backbreaking labor just to barely make rent, a profound, crushing sense of hopelessness washed over me. I was so tired, I was so fundamentally, existentially exhausted. I just wanted a way out, even a fantasy of a way out. My eyes locked onto a gold-foiled ticket in the center of the display. It was called the Millionaire's Gold Rush. The ticket cost $3. "Hey," I heard my own voice say, sounding distant and hollow, "give me one of those Gold Rush tickets, too." "With my change." The cashier glanced at me, shrugged, and tore a ticket from the roll. He slid it across the counter along with my remaining 58 cents. I took the ticket, the sandwich, and the energy drink and walked over to a small, sticky counter near the coffee machines. I didn't even want to wait until I got home. I just wanted the momentary, fleeting thrill of imagining I had won before tossing the worthless cardboard into the trash. I pulled a quarter from my pocket. The ticket was simple. There were 5 winning numbers at the top, hidden beneath a layer of silver latex. Below that were 20-year numbers. Match any of your numbers to the winning numbers and you win the prize shown below. Standard exploitative mechanics. I scratched off the winning numbers first. 14, 27, 3, 41, 19. I moved to the your numbers section. I scratched the first row. 8, 22, 54, 12, nothing. I felt the familiar, heavy weight of reality settling back onto my shoulders. It was a stupid waste of $3. $3 could have bought me a box of pasta and a jar of sauce. I was an idiot. I scratched the second row. 33, 16, 9, 45. Nothing. I scratched the third row, 2, 18, and then the third spot. The silver latex flaked away beneath the edge of my quarter, revealing a stark, black number. I blinked. I looked up at the winning numbers. 14. I had a match. My heart gave a tiny, pathetic flutter. It was probably a $5 prize, a break-even ticket, maybe $10 if I was incredibly lucky. I moved the quarter down to scratch off the prize amount located directly beneath the 14. I scratched away the top layer. I saw a 5. Okay, $5, not terrible. I kept scratching. A 0, $50. My pulse quickened. $50 meant groceries for the week. $50 meant I could maybe put gas in my ancient, rattling Honda Civic instead of taking the bus. I scratched more, another zero, $500. My breath hitched in my throat, I stopped breathing entirely. $500 was a miracle, $500 was a month of rent, it was textbooks, it was breathing room. My hands began to shake violently. I couldn't control the tremor. I pressed the quarter down hard and violently scratched away the rest of the latex in one swift motion. There was a comma, and then three more zeros, $500,000. I stared at the ticket. The harsh fluorescent lights of the gas station reflected off the shiny gold foil, blinding me momentarily. I blinked rapidly, rubbing my eyes with the back of my damp sleeve, convinced I was hallucinating. I must have fallen asleep on the bus. I must be having a fever dream. I looked at the number again. 14, $500,000, $500,000, $500,000. The silence in my head was deafening. The ambient noise of the gas station, the humming refrigerators, the tinny pop music playing from a ceiling speaker, the rain lashing against the glass windows, all of it faded away into a low, rushing static. The blood roared in my ears. I felt a sudden, violent wave of nausea wash over me, followed immediately by a surge of adrenaline so pure and intense it felt like a physical electric shock. My knees buckled slightly and I had to lean heavily against the sticky counter to keep from collapsing onto the linoleum floor. $500,000. It wasn't billionaire money. It wasn't buy an island and retire forever money. But for a 24-year-old drowning in debt, making barely above minimum wage, it was absolute, unequivocal salvation. It meant the student loans were gone instantly. It meant I could quit the warehouse. It meant I could quit the coffee shop. It meant I could focus entirely on my engineering degree. It meant I could move out of my mother's house. It meant I would never, ever have to look at my brother's smug, entitled face ever again. It was freedom. Pure, unadulterated freedom, printed on a 3-inch by 5-inch piece of cheap cardboard. I stood there for what felt like hours, paralyzed by the magnitude of what I was holding. Panic began to intertwine with the euphoria. This ticket was a bearer instrument. Whoever possessed it owned the $500,000. If I dropped it, if it flew out of my hand into a puddle, if someone mugged me on the way home, the money would be gone. I looked around the gas station with wild, paranoid eyes. The cashier was still looking at his phone. There was a guy in a trench coat looking at the motor oil. No one was watching me. No one knew. I quickly folded the ticket in half, terrified of damaging the barcode, and shoved it deep into the front pocket of my jeans. I practically ran out of the gas station, leaving the sandwich and the energy drink sitting on the counter. The rain hit my face, cold and sharp, but I didn't feel it. I sprinted the remaining 4 blocks to my house, my hand jammed deeply into my pocket, clutching the folded cardboard like a lifeline. When I burst through the front door, the house was dark and silent. It was 1:30 a.m. My mother was asleep. Trent, miraculously, was not playing video games at maximum volume in the living room. I crept down the hallway, the floorboards creaking under my soaked boots, and slipped into my small bedroom. I locked the door behind me. I turned on the small desk lamp, pulling the ticket out of my pocket. I smoothed it out on my desk, my hands still shaking uncontrollably. I stared at it again. It was real. It was actually real. But as the initial shock began to subside, the cold, calculating, engineering part of my brain took over. I had $500,000 sitting in a house shared by a notorious, unrepentant thief, Trent. If Trent found out about this ticket, he would stop at nothing to take it. He would rationalize it, of course. He would tell himself that because we were family, it was technically our money. He would tell himself he needed it more for his business. He would simply take it, claim it, and leave me with nothing but another story of his betrayal. I couldn't just hide it. Hiding it wasn't enough. Trent was a snooper. He regularly went through my drawers looking for loose change or things to pawn. He knew all my hiding spots. Under the mattress, too cliché, inside a book. He might sell the book. I needed to protect it unequivocally and legally. I needed to secure the asset. I turned around and looked at my bookshelf. A few weeks prior, I had been working on a complex project for a materials science elective. The project involved tracking stress fractures in polymers, and for part of the presentation, I had ordered a specialized, industrial-grade ultraviolet reactive ink pen. It was designed for security marking, completely invisible under normal light but glaringly bright under UV blacklight. It bonded deeply with porous surfaces like paper and cardboard, making it impossible to wash off or erase without destroying the material itself. I tore through my supply bin, my heart hammering against my ribs, until my fingers brushed against the smooth plastic of the marker. I pulled it out. I grabbed a small handheld UV flashlight I had bought with it. I sat down at my desk, placed the winning lottery ticket face down. The back of the ticket had the standard legal jargon, a barcode, and a line that said, "Signature of claimant." The lottery commission rules were explicit. Whoever signs the back of the ticket is the legal owner. I clicked the cap off the UV pen. Taking a deep breath to steady my trembling hand, I wrote my full legal name, my driver's license number, my phone number, and my home address in the invisible ink, writing directly over the designated signature line. I pressed hard, ensuring the ink soaked deep into the fibers of the cardboard. When I finished, the back of the ticket looked completely blank to the naked eye. I clicked on the UV flashlight and swept it over the ticket. My signature and information glowed in a brilliant, undeniable radioactive blue. I turned off the flashlight, blank again, but that wasn't enough. I needed an airtight chain of custody. I pulled out my smartphone, checked the battery, and switched it to 4K video recording. I propped the phone up on a stack of textbooks, ensuring the camera had a clear, well-lit view of my desk. I hit record. I stood in front of the camera. My name is my name. Today is Tuesday, November 28th. It is currently 2:14 a.m. I have just purchased and scratched a winning Millionaire's Gold Rush lottery ticket worth $500,000. I held the ticket up to the camera, zooming in carefully so the unique serial number printed at the bottom of the ticket was clearly legible in the high-definition footage. I am the sole owner and purchaser of this ticket. I then flipped the ticket over. I held it close to the lens to show it appeared blank. Then I turned on the UV flashlight and illuminated the back of the ticket on camera. The blue ink blazed, clearly showing my signature, my ID number, and my details. I have signed this ticket using invisible UV-reactive ink to prevent theft. If anyone else attempts to claim this ticket, it has been stolen from me. I stopped recording. I immediately uploaded the massive 4K video file to 3 separate, secure cloud storage drives and emailed a copy to myself. The trap was set, but the loop wasn't closed. First thing the next morning, before my shift at the coffee shop, I made a phone call. I sat in my freezing car in the driveway and called the State Lottery Commission's Security Division. It took navigating through a maze of automated menus, but I finally reached a human being, a gruff-sounding investigator named Miller. I explained the situation. I didn't tell him I had won $500,000. I just told him I had a significant winning ticket, and I lived in a highly volatile living situation with a family member who had a history of theft. I explained the UV ink. I gave him the exact serial number of the ticket. I told him I had time-stamped 4K video evidence of my ownership and the invisible signature. "Smart kid," Miller said, his tone shifting from bored bureaucrat to mildly impressed professional. "We get stolen ticket claims all the time. Usually it's a he-said-she-said nightmare. If he takes it and tries to sign his name over the blank space, his normal ink will sit right on top of your UV ink. When our scanners hit it, your name will glow right through his. I'm flagging this serial number in the central database right now. If anyone tries to scan this ticket at a terminal or bring it to the headquarters, the system will lock them out and notify the authorities immediately. It's marked as stolen property in the system." "Thank you, sir," I breathed, feeling a massive, crushing weight lift off my chest. "Keep that video safe. If someone tries to claim it, we'll need it for the fraud charges." I hung up the phone. The asset was secured. The ticket was completely, utterly useless to anyone but me. Now the question was what to do with it while I waited the mandatory 3 days to make an appointment at the lottery headquarters to claim the prize. I could have taken it with me, kept it in my wallet, but my wallet got banged around at the warehouse and I didn't want to risk damaging the barcode or losing it. And then a darker, colder thought crept into my mind. A thought born of 24 years of resentment, 24 years of watching Trent destroy everything he touched and walk away without a single consequence. If I hid it really well, Trent might never find it. But what if I just left it? What if I put it in my desk drawer, under a stack of notebooks, not out in the open, but exactly in the kind of place Trent would look if he was snooping for cash? It was a test, a final, definitive test of his character. If he stayed out of my room, he would be fine. If he violated my privacy, if he stole from me again, he would trigger the trap. And this time there would be no mother to protect him. There would be no gaslighting. This time he would be stepping into a federal offense. I walked back into my room. I placed the ticket inside the middle drawer of my desk, slipping it between the pages of an old spiral-bound calculus notebook. I closed the drawer. I didn't lock the bedroom door. I went to my double shifts. I pulled the espresso. I hauled the boxes. I walked through the next 3 days in a bizarre Zen-like trance. My back still hurt, my bank account was still overdrawn, but my mind was utterly calm. I was a god watching mortals scurry about. I held the keys to the kingdom. On Friday evening, I came home from the warehouse at my usual 1 a.m. The house was quiet. I walked into my room, flicked on the light, and went straight to the desk. I opened the middle drawer. I pulled out the calculus notebook. I opened it. The ticket was gone. In its place, resting neatly on the spiral binding, was a small, torn piece of yellow-lined paper. I picked it up. Written in Trent's sloppy, arrogant handwriting were 5 words that would seal his fate. Finders keepers, little bro, thanks. I stared at the note. I didn't panic. I didn't scream. I didn't feel the familiar, sickening drop in my stomach that usually accompanied Trent's thefts. Instead, a slow, dark, predatory smile spread across my face. I sat down in my desk chair, looked at the note, and began to laugh. It was a quiet, shaking laugh at first, but it grew louder, echoing in the small bedroom. He had done it. The absolute, predictable, greedy fool had taken the bait. He had no idea what he had just done. The weekend was a masterclass in watching a man architect his own destruction. Trent didn't come home on Friday night or Saturday. Instead, he took to social media. And Trent, being the raging narcissist that he was, could not keep his mouth shut. On Saturday morning, I woke up, made a cup of cheap instant coffee, and opened Instagram. At the top of my feed, Trent's story circle was glowing with a purple ring, indicating he had posted multiple times. I tapped it. The first story was a video of Trent sitting in the driver's seat of a brand new metallic black Mercedes-Benz G-Wagon. The interior was pristine white leather. He was holding the steering wheel with one hand and filming with the other. The caption read, "Manifested it, big moves only, money with wings." I took a sip of my coffee. A G-Wagon. He had leased a G-Wagon. The next story was a boomerang video of him clinking 2 massive, jewel-encrusted Rolex watches together inside what looked like a high-end jewelry store. Caption, "Upgrades. Because I deserve it." The third story was from a VIP booth at the most expensive, exclusive nightclub downtown. The video was dark, strobing with laser lights. Several scantily clad women were pouring champagne with sparklers attached to the bottles. Trent's face filled the frame, sweaty and manic, screaming over the deafening bass. "We up now, never looking back." He was spending money he didn't have. He couldn't cash the ticket over the weekend. The lottery headquarters were closed, but he had the ticket in his possession. He knew he had $500,000 coming on Monday morning. So what did Trent do? He leveraged it. He must have gone to the high-interest credit lenders, the luxury dealerships, the jewelers, and showed them the physical winning ticket as proof of incoming assets. He had probably opened multiple lines of massive, high-interest credit based on the promise of the imminent payout. He was spending the $500,000 before he had even claimed it. The sheer, monumental stupidity of it was awe-inspiring. I sat at my cheap kitchen table, watching him dig a financial grave so deep he would never, ever climb out of it. He was racking up tens of thousands, maybe hundreds of thousands of dollars in irreversible debt. He was throwing a party to celebrate his theft. Sunday passed in much the same way, more posts, designer clothes. Massive dinners at steakhouses. He was a king holding court funded by my stolen future. My mother finally noticed he was gone and asked me if I had seen him. "I think he came into some money, Mom," I said smoothly, washing my coffee mug in the sink. "He's out celebrating." "Oh, thank goodness," she sighed, clutching her pearls. "I knew his crypto investments would pay off eventually. He just needed time. You should be happy for your brother." "I am, Mom," I replied, my voice completely devoid of emotion. "I am incredibly happy for him." Monday morning arrived. It was the day of reckoning. The state lottery headquarters opened at 9 a.m. They were located in a large, imposing glass building in the center of the city. I knew Trent wouldn't just walk in quietly to claim the money. He needed an audience. He needed the world to see his triumph. I didn't go to my morning coffee shop shift. I called in sick. Instead, I sat on my couch, my laptop open on the coffee table, tuned into the live feed of the local morning news channel. I had a strong suspicion of how this would play out. At 9:15 a.m., the news anchor, a woman with perfectly sprayed hair and a plastic smile, broke into the broadcast. "We have a breaking, feel-good story coming to you live from the state lottery headquarters downtown," she chirped. "Our very own field reporter, Dave Samuels, is standing by with a lucky local man who has just walked in with a $500,000 winning scratch-off ticket. Dave, what's the atmosphere like down there?" The screen split, showing Dave Samuels standing in the brightly lit lobby of the lottery building. And standing right next to him, wearing a ridiculous, clearly brand new Gucci tracksuit and a pair of oversized designer sunglasses indoors, was Trent. He was practically vibrating with smug, self-satisfied energy. He had the gold-foiled ticket pinched between his fingers, holding it up for the camera like a trophy. I leaned forward on the couch. "Thanks, Sarah," Dave said into his microphone. "I'm here with Trent, a local entrepreneur who is having the Monday of a lifetime." "Trent, you just walked in here holding a ticket worth $500,000. How are you feeling right now?" Trent smirked, adjusting his sunglasses. I'm feeling blessed, Dave. You know, I've always worked hard, always hustled. I've been grinding for years building my businesses, and the universe finally decided to reward my positive energy. This is just the beginning, seed money for the empire. I almost vomited, the absolute audacity. Well, it's an incredible stroke of luck, Dave said. I understand you're about to head to the counter to officially validate the ticket and claim your giant check. That's right, Trent said, puffing out his chest. Let's go get paid. The camera followed Trent and the reporter as they walked up to the massive, bulletproof glass counter that served as the validation station. Behind the glass stood a severe-looking woman in a lottery commission uniform. Trent slapped the ticket down on the metal tray and slid it under the glass with a theatrical flourish. $500,000, please, sweetheart, Trent said, flashing his most obnoxious smile. The woman behind the glass didn't smile back. She picked up the ticket, she turned it over to look at the back. I knew what she was seeing. The blank signature line where Trent, in his supreme arrogance, had boldly signed his own name in standard blue ink over what he thought was empty space. She placed the ticket into the high-tech optical scanner on her desk. I watched the live feed. I watched the woman's computer screen. I couldn't see the monitor, but I could see the reflection in the glass behind her. The screen suddenly flashed a violent, flashing red. The woman's demeanor instantly changed. She didn't look at Trent. She subtly reached under her desk and pressed a button. Then she picked up a landline phone and spoke quietly into it. Trent shifted his weight, his Gucci track pants rustling. Is there a problem? Just print the check, I've got places to be. Just a moment, sir, the woman said, her voice completely flat. The system is running a standard verification protocol for prizes over $100,000. Take your time, Trent laughed, turning to the news camera, making sure all the zeros are there. Dave, the reporter, chuckled politely. 60 seconds passed. The silence in the lobby was becoming palpable. Trent's smile was beginning to look a little strained. He tapped his fingers impatiently on the glass. Then the heavy double doors leading to the back offices swung open violently. 4 men walked out. They were not wearing lottery commission uniforms. They were wearing dark suits, tactical vests, and the unmistakable badges of the State Police Financial Crimes Division. Leading them was a tall, broad-shouldered man I recognized immediately from my phone call. Investigator Miller. Trent turned around as the men approached, his brow furrowed in confusion. Whoa, am I getting a police escort for the cash? That's what's up. Miller didn't slow down. He walked straight up to Trent, his face carved out of granite. He didn't even glance at the news camera. Trenton, last name? Miller asked, his voice booming through the lobby. Yeah, that's me, Trent said, his swagger faltering slightly as the 3 other officers flanked him, effectively boxing him against the counter. Mr. Last name, my name is Investigator Miller with the State Police. Miller held up his hand. The woman behind the glass slid the ticket back to him through the slot. Miller picked it up. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small metallic cylinder, a UV flashlight. Mr. Last name, you presented this ticket for validation, claiming you are the legal owner and purchaser. Is that correct? Yeah, I bought it. It's mine. What's the problem? Trent said, his voice pitching up an octave, the first true notes of panic bleeding through his bravado. The problem, Trent, Miller said coldly, is that this ticket was reported stolen on Tuesday morning by the actual purchaser. Stolen, Trent barked, a nervous laugh escaping his lips. That's insane. Who reported it? You can't prove that. It's a piece of paper. Whoever holds it owns it. It was blank when I bought it. Miller clicked the UV flashlight on. He turned the back of the ticket toward Trent and toward the news camera, which was eagerly zooming in on the confrontation. He shined the blacklight onto the signature line. Even through the compressed, slightly pixelated live feed on my laptop, the result was spectacular. The invisible ink erupted into a blazing, undeniable neon blue. There, glowing brilliantly beneath Trent's hastily scrawled signature, was my full legal name, my address, and my driver's license number. It was absolute, irrefutable proof. Trent stared at the glowing blue letters. The color completely drained from his face, leaving him looking like a terrified, spray-tanned ghost. His mouth opened and closed, but no sound came out. The gears in his head were grinding to a halt as the reality of the trap closed its jaws around him. We have time-stamped 4K video evidence from the original owner securing this ticket with ultraviolet ink prior to the theft, Miller continued, his voice ringing with absolute authority. We have the serial number flagged in our database. You, sir, have just attempted to defraud the State Lottery Commission of $500,000 using stolen property. No. Wait, Trent stammered, taking a step back, bumping into the solid wall of a police officer behind him. It's a misunderstanding. It's my brother's ticket. We live together. It's a family thing. We share things. I was just claiming it for us. That's not what the note you left in his desk said, Miller countered. Finders keepers, wasn't it? Trent's eyes widened in sheer, unadulterated horror. He realized in that exact second that I hadn't just hidden the ticket, I had laid a snare and he had gleefully swan dived into it. Trenton, last name, Miller said, stepping forward and reaching for his belt. You are under arrest for grand larceny, possession of stolen property, and attempted fraud. The sound of the metal handcuffs ratcheting closed around Trent's wrists echoed sharply over the live broadcast. Wait. You can't do this, Trent shrieked, his voice breaking into a pathetic, desperate whine. I have debt, I have contracts, the cars, the watches, I need that money. You have the right to remain silent, the officer behind him droned, forcibly spinning Trent around and marching him toward the exit. Anything you say can and will be used against you in a court of law. The camera panned to follow them as they dragged the golden child, kicking and screaming obscenities out of the lobby and into the bright Monday morning sunlight. Dave Samuels, the reporter, stood frozen, his microphone lowered, completely dumbfounded by the chaotic scene that had just unfolded on live morning television. Well, Sarah, Dave stammered, looking back into the lens. It appears there's been a stunning development here at the lottery headquarters. I reached forward and quietly closed the laptop. The screen went black. The silence in my small apartment was profound. It wasn't the heavy, oppressive silence of exhaustion I was used to. It was a light, airy silence. It was the sound of peace. I leaned back on the couch and took a deep breath. Trent was gone. He was looking at years in a state penitentiary for defrauding a government entity. The massive debts he had accumulated over the weekend in his narcissistic frenzy would legally ruin him. His life as he knew it was over, destroyed entirely by his own uncontrollable greed and arrogance. As for me, I had an appointment with Investigator Miller later that afternoon. I would hand over the video files, sign the official police report, and finally, legally claim the $500,000 that was rightfully mine. I would pay off my loans, I would buy a decent car. I would rent a quiet, clean apartment far, far away from my mother's house. I would finish my engineering degree in peace. I stood up, stretched my aching back, and walked to the kitchen to pour myself another cup of coffee. As I looked out the window at the morning sun, I realized that for the first time in my 24 years of existence, I didn't feel tired.